Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are listening from. My name is Balve Bains and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the most important meal of the day. This is Strategy for Breakfast, the podcast all about real business challenges based on real business conversations. This week, we are focusing on unifying CX and we have a fantastic guest to talk through all the latest trends here today, the brilliant Joe Charnitski. Now, Joe is the Director for CXM Best Practices over at Sprinklr and has over a decade's worth of experience in social media, digital marketing strategy, execution, analysis. He's done it all, both at the agency and the brand level. So he's worked with the likes of VH1 and also direct brands. Certainly the perfect person to be talking about this topic. But before we get started, please do subscribe, share, let us know what you think of this podcast. We would love to get your thoughts on that. We want every episode to be as interesting and entertaining as possible. You can get in contact via the comments below or email us podcast@gdsgroup.com. Hello and welcome, Joe. How are you?
Balve, great to be here. I'm doing very well. Thanks so much for bringing me on.
No, it's my pleasure. I think you've got the best smile in the business, so I can't wait to get started. So let's dive straight into this conversation. So I mentioned in my introduction there that you work for Sprinklr. So unifying the customer experience management. So how are you sort of doing that over in the space that you're in, Joe?
Sure. So Sprinklr, we just had our 13th birthday this past September. I've been here for 8 of those years. So in the tech space, that's like 100 years. And, we've been in this world of unifying customer experience that entire time. Our founder and CEO, Raji Thomas, purpose-built a platform where a marketer could be planning campaigns and a customer service supervisor could be managing a team of agents, and they could share insights with a researcher who's, listening to all major digital channels to make sure they truly have a unified, actionable voice of the customer, voice of the consumer to work with. And, I will say 8 years ago, we had to explain that to a lot of people. We had to sort of get people to understand the value of that unified point of view. We're not explaining as much anymore. There's a lot of nodding heads. There's a lot of technology partners that talk about customer experience, but everyone is now struggling with the fact that those experiences are being managed in quite literally dozens of locations with dozens of pieces of technology, and that's just not manageable. And so now when we go in and talk to prospects or even some of the hundreds of customers we have, it's around, yes, I get it. How do we do it? And that's a lot of where my team comes in, best practices, strategy, and helping folks make sense of what is no doubt a very complicated space.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to ask you, you said 8 years ago, absolute lifetime. It could be it's such a lifetime ago. So what do you think the difference are between back then, 8 years ago, and what it is now? I don't even want to comprehend how far it's come. But what do you think the differences are between 8 years ago and what it is now?
I think one is what we touched on, that there was a bit of an explaining process about the importance of unifying what a marketing team is doing, what an advertising team is doing, what a customer service team is doing. I think the learning curve isn't as steep now, and we've got customers coming to us asking some of those questions. I think, certainly over the past few years, first with COVID and with the lockdowns everyone experienced and the dramatic shift in the importance of working remotely wherever you are, along with now the economic uncertainty that folks have been experiencing both as consumers and as executives, has created a really crisp understanding, one, of doing more with less. So streamlining, everyone's trying to figure out how to make the most of their team's time. They know that time can be spent wherever the team feels most valuable and most productive. So the idea of, for example, asynchronous communication over any channel, live chat and messaging and social for service, is so much more well understood, well appreciated. And again, enterprises are coming to us with questions as opposed to us going to them. So I think the shifts in our culture, the shifts in how folks are working, quote unquote, the changes in the economy, I think it's just brought everyone up to speed on the opportunities in a unified customer experience world. I think also, 8 years ago and even further, people talked about customer experience. They talked a lot about being customer centric, and they ended up doing it in a way in which, 10 different teams in every country were buying some sort of piece of technology to sort of deal with CX. And as I mentioned, that's just not sustainable anymore. And I think people are really buying into that. They're consolidating their choices. Again, we're hearing from people, not just going to people talking about the value of unification. We're hearing from executives saying, I need to simplify my tech stack. I need to simplify how my teams work. It's far too complicated to have a customer service agent jumping around to different screens and different bits of technology. It's slowing them down when they try and serve their customers. And I will tell you about one of the big themes I'm hearing all the time, I know my peers are hearing all the time, is folks are in a race. Executives feel like they are in a race. And what we talk about at Sprinklr is the availability of publicly available data that allows you to truly hear in real time what consumers think about you, your business, your products, your services, your competitors, the values they're sharing. They're going to tell you, I want to do business with brands and organizations that share my values. Well, what are their values? You better go find out. And they're telling you every day. So I think the opportunity is there. That publicly available data is there, but it's there for everybody to take advantage of. And so the race is on to be relevant, to be personalized, and to be of top of mind, for your customers, for your consumers, and for those you want to engage with.
I love the bit where you said about being streamlined. We've heard in recent news about the tech layoffs over at Meta, and obviously Elon's doing his thing at Twitter. So how do you think we can do that? And you mentioned doing more with less. That is the silver bullet, isn't it? Doing more with less. How do you think we can do that? Not as just as a business, but also as a society.
Well, let me start with the business, and I'll zoom in. Sprinklr does, as I mentioned, customer service, marketing, advertising, research, engagement. Let's just stay in customer service and customer care for a second. I talk a lot about this concept of clearing the path and lightening the load for customer service teams. I don't know about you, Balve, but for me, if I've had a bad experience with a brand, I had to complain, I had to send a message about a product or a service, 4 out of 5 times, the person I'm talking to really wants to help me. You could tell they have a great desire to help, but the system they have in place may not allow them to do so. It may be too many hurdles to jump over and hoops to jump through, and pick your jumping analogy. So for us, we talk about, the first moment that a customer service agent looks at a message, for example, from social or a messaging channel or a live chat, they should be empowered and ready to help. So that means they shouldn't be wasting time trying to figure out, is this message even worth someone addressing? Is this message something for me to address? What's the sentiment of this message? How angry or whatever is this person? Like, that should be done for them by well-tested, well-vetted AI. So by the time they get a message, they know it's important, it's for me, and here's what's going on. Here's the context, here's the sentiment, here's what this person needs. That's clearing the path and lightening the load. And so therefore, you can do more as an agent. I don't need to maybe hire as many people as I was planning to, because now I've got really optimized teams. But even more importantly, and I love to ask this of executives, with that time being saved, what are you going to do with that time? Is everyone signing off early for the day? Probably not. But now there's something I could invest in to improve customer experience, to make customers happier in a proactive way. If you're in the hospitality world, maybe now you've got some time to engage with your loyalty customers. in a way that you didn't have that time before. Maybe you could support marketing in a way you couldn't before. I know in the CPG space, they're talking a lot about, agents are just worn out being on the front end of so much negativity from so many consumers. Wouldn't it be great to engage with happy consumers who are posting amazing things? And that gives you an opportunity. Now you're freed up to engage with them. So one of the ways, not just to do more with less, but to do things that are more fulfilling and more gratifying for the team, is to clear the path, lighten the load, take away the tasks that they shouldn't be wasting time doing. That we are now in a place with technology that we could handle the more menial tasks and give people substantial work to do that really drives forth a better experience. And I haven't really thought about it, but I think I love your question. Just how can we do, more with less as a society? I think that also adds to it, like making sure that there's meaning to the work we're doing and we don't just feel like we're just checking boxes, right? AI is powerful enough now to do some work for us that isn't worth our time. We could be doing more impactful work that engages with other people and helps them improve their experience. Ask any customer service agent or a marketer or anybody who has the opportunity to engage with a consumer or a customer. When they know they've made an impact, the gratification is significant. It's priceless. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're more likely to complain about something than you are to say you've had good service. And I don't know about you, Joe, but that's not the world I want to live in. I'm quite a positive person. So I like, if someone's given me good service or I've had good experience, I want to tell them. I want to say, thank you so much. It's been such a good experience for me. So it's in that vein, what do you think empathy plays in that customer experience, in that customer sort of space when we're talking to these big, huge corporate brands that you hear of? So empathy, what does that play in that sense?
Yeah, it's a huge point. I love that. It's a cousin of authenticity, which is getting to the point of overuse a little bit. Authenticity, it's, you hate to see a really important concept devolve into a buzzword. I fear authenticity is getting there, but it's so important. You can only empathize with someone if you truly sort of open yourself up to their experience and listen to their experience, right? And not prejudge and not jump to. So again, if we're thinking about the customer brand relationship, first and foremost, how well do I truly know these consumers and maybe this specific consumer I'm speaking to or the cross section they represent? I can't serve you if I don't know you. I'm sort of artificial. It's almost like we were talking earlier about holiday shopping, and it's like buying a gift for a loved one that is, the generic gift card to store X, right? And the personalized scarf that your mom is going to love because you walked through that store with her that one time 3 months ago and she made a comment about it and you give it to her and she said, oh, you remembered that I love this. And that's empathy. That's personalization. That's saying I'm listening enough. I'm caring enough to listen. And I want to be of service to you in a way that shows I truly care. I'm not just checking some sort of box because I'm supposed to buy you a gift at this time of year. So I think empathy is huge in that relationship. Look, I would love for consumers to think about empathy when they're dealing in customer service situations. Like I said, 4 out of 5, if not more, of the agents who are helping you really want to help you. And they're just folks fielding calls and messages every day. They're doing their best. I think, this might be more philosophical than we're planning to go into, but I do think as a society, we could lean into empathy and sort of putting myself in the shoes of others a lot more than we do. It would open us up to some new ideas and new points of view in the world, but certainly in our relationships to consumers and as consumers to brands. Let's not forget that everyone we're dealing with is a human being and everyone is doing their best in one way or another. And let's take a breath and remember that.
Yeah, definitely. As you were speaking, Joe, I've just cancelled the generic gift card I had from my girlfriend. Joe,
I'm here to help, Beth.
That's what we're here for. But I love the bit about you're talking about how people just want to help, but they can't help you if they don't have that data. And I didn't want to bring up the D word so early in this podcast, but I'm going to do it. So so be it. But data, I knew it's going to come up, and I'm going to be the one to do it. So for people to have that hyper personalization, you need data. But consumers don't want to give you that data. So how can you find a halfway house between being personalized to, because I love, adverts or whatever it might be being personalized to me, but I don't want to give my data to these corporations, to these companies. So how can you find a halfway house between being personalized to and also giving up that all important data to these companies?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One is, if you believe in the survey data out there, that people, when they're asked, they will tell you, sure, I'll give you my email address, or I'll give you some sort of personal information if I'm going to get something unique, personalized, and valuable in return. So I do think consumers, and this goes back to your earlier question about what's changed over the past 8 years or so, I think consumers have continued to get smarter and savvier, and they know every terms and conditions thing that comes up and every box they could check, will you allow us to have your data? That the idea is, so you're going to advertise to me with this. You're going to try and give me some, okay, fine, but now the bar is higher. If you're going to take my data, you better give me something for it that's of value. So I would say for brand leaders listening to this conversation, understand that is the point of view from your consumers. Sure, I'll give you this, but now I'm expecting something very special in return. The second thing that comes to mind is, again, social, Reddit, blogs, forums, all of these places are overrun with data. They're overrun with points of view, with opinions about, again, brands and their services and their products and their competitors. So it's all out there. So that's also publicly available and very rich. In some cases, it's the granularity that's most important to be able to get, the example I will give, let's say you're a bank and you see a post on Reddit that says, I love my local branch. The people who work there are so helpful. I wish when I called in, it was anywhere near as gratifying. I will always have my savings account with them. I would never invest with them. Now, tell me the sentiment of that post. Tell me, but you can't. It's rich, but there's so much to learn from that one person and their experience that brands can take advantage of. So I do think consumers are willing to share data proactively when asked for exchange of something valuable to them. But also, there's a lot of publicly available data already out there because that's the nature of our world right now. But what about reviews? Google reviews and all of those kinds of things. Like it's almost an embarrassment of riches if you're trying to understand the voice of the consumer. If you're not taking advantage of that, I'm not sure what you're doing. Like it's there, it's begging to be asked. But I don't want to skim over really maybe the soul of your question, which is that respect for consumers' data. I do think that's foundational to this whole thing too, is to say, not just in a protection from hackers kind of a security, although that's really important, but to say like, yeah, you're willing to give me this. I am going to give conscious thought and be very careful and say, this is what I'm going to give you in return for that data. And to understand that this is not just a transaction. It is a relationship, whether it's, customer experience relationship or it's, the old CRM world, which is still, of course, really important. It is about relationships, and transactions aren't the same things as relationships.
So I'm not sure if I'm pulling on the right thread here, but with what you've just said, would that create a rapid, actionable insight network for companies and for organizations as well? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's the need. That's the need for sure. So, I mean, we're talking a lot these days about, as you said, the D word. And again, I don't need to convince any executive anywhere the importance of data, right? No one's going to say, ooh, tell me more. I haven't heard this before.
What is this data?
Yeah, right. The challenge, let's say the few challenges that they're facing. One is, okay, is it granular, right? So the data that I'm getting, as I mentioned, is that as granular as it needs to be? Am I getting it from all the sources and all the places where I could be getting it? And this is something I encourage people to challenge your technology partners on these ideas. The people who are supposed to be delivering to you the tools and the insights and the ability to deliver better customer experience, challenge them on these things. One is, am I getting data from all the places it could be? I just mentioned, Reddit and blogs and all those kind of places. Am I getting it from all those places? Is it granular? And is it across all the different categories I need to care about? Okay, now I'm drowning in data. Great. Thanks so much for that, Joe. You've been a big help. You can only have the confidence to do that. I mentioned AI before in the customer service example. Now I'll do it in sort of the data collection and research example. I can only have the confidence to do that if I believe I have high-powered, specific AI for my industry that will help me surface an insight. I already said you're drowning in data, so I'm going to mix my metaphors. Pardon me, but executives and their teams don't have time to dig through the haystacks. The needles have to appear on their behalf. And that's what AI can do. So I can bring in all the data if I believe that I have AI capabilities, and you should challenge your tech partners on these capabilities to surface insights and to make them powerful and actionable. Okay, now I've got a bunch of insights. Great. I've got to get them in the hands of decision makers. And I do a lot of reading these days, trying to understand, what's on top of mind for executives who I'm going to be speaking to or not, just kind of what's going on in the industries. And there was one, the CDO from Unilever was interviewed, and he talked about this concept. And when it came to the point of delivering those insights, he talked about, here's the definition of who needs those insights. Anyone who's going to make a forward-looking decision that is going to drive growth through personalized engagement with consumers. So anybody in your organization who is thinking about the future, marketers, advertisers, again, service teams, I would throw in there recruiters and HR people because they're building the company for the future. Anyone who is there to make those forward-looking decisions that will drive growth through personalized engagement, they need those insights, and they need them rapidly. So you're absolutely right. That goes back to our race metaphor. There's a race to relevance. I steal that from one of the executives at one of the larger CPGs I met with. I told her when she said it to me, I'm stealing this. I'm using it from now on because it's exactly right. There is a race to relevance that everyone's experiencing. And as you put it, teams need rapid, actionable insights that they could act upon. They need a network built for them that allows that to happen. And, to circle back to where we started, if that data isn't unified, if teams aren't collaborating, the race to relevance is not a sprint or a marathon. It's a relay race. There are teams trying to accomplish this. And if you look at any relay team, if that pass of the baton is not crisp, you are losing valuable seconds. And so I think about collaboration. I think about how that network can work. I think about how marketers, advertisers, service leaders, et cetera, can take those insights, make business decisions, and then learn from them and say, hey, this worked or this didn't. And that gets fed back in to the network at the very beginning. There's more insights fueling the machine. It becomes sort of a self-sustained ecosystem of insight after a certain period of time. But that's absolutely where everyone's head is at. That's where you need to challenge your technology partners. That's how you turn this vague idea of data into something richer and more actionable.
Perfect. I'm just writing down race for relevancy. There we go. So yeah. I've stole that from you, Joe. And just the last question before we end this podcast here, Joe. What does the future look like for yourself, but also for Sprinklr? I just read that you've just teamed up with Salesforce, which is a brilliant partnership. So what does the future look like for you, Joe?
Well, yeah, I'm happy you brought up the Salesforce partnership. We've been integrating with Salesforce for, I think, about 5 years now. So that part's not new. The partnership, what's exciting about that is, as I mentioned, the CRM space has been, so valuable. What you know about your consumers, your customers' behaviors, as far as how often they shop and what they're buying, that's always going to be so valuable. What we've been building at Sprinklr, this CXM world, this is what consumers know about you and what they're saying about you. We have always said you've got to merge those two things together, and this partnership along with bringing in partners like our go-to-market partners like Accenture. This is going to truly connect those two worlds in a way that we've been working for a long time. And the opportunities for the savvy and the adventurous and the ambitious executives out there is to say, now that I've connected these two approaches to my customer, and I know more and it's more actionable, what can I unleash? And I think that's what's going to be super exciting. I can't wait to see what the leaders in these spaces do and what everyone around them sort of picks up from their leadership. So that's exciting. We're on the brink of that. I think you're going to see more consolidation in this space. I think you're going to see not just more and more executives saying our tech stack is too complicated, we've got to simplify. That's not going to stop. I just think you're going to see fewer and fewer players. I think we're already seeing some consolidation around main themes. What I'm excited about is we've purpose built a platform from the start that unifies all of these front office functions. We're not trying to figure it out late in the game. So that's exciting. As far as for me, again, 8 years, that is by far a record for me at any company. So I suppose I'm enjoying my time at Sprinklr. I'm looking forward to conversations like this and kind of spreading the word about what we're doing. There's so much for me to learn from executives and from peers out in the world, and we're having some great conversations. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where the new year takes us. I think it's going to be a really exciting space. And a year from now, I really hope we've taken some big steps forward on being more empathetic to each other, to our customers, to our peers, and being able to make each other a little bit happier every day. That's our number one goal.
That's definitely the number one goal. Joe, let's meet up in 12 months and talk about this again. I'd love that.
I would love that too, man. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
It's been fun. Thank you so much for that, Joe. I've enjoyed the conversation so much. And if you have enjoyed listening at home, don't forget to subscribe, share, and let us know what you think of this pod. We want this to be as interesting and entertaining as possible. So let us know which topics you'd like us to cover for future episodes. Get in touch via the comments or email us, podcast@gdsgroup.com. And just remember, strategy for breakfast. We are the most important meal of the day.